Hello there! This video is going to show you how to create scatter plots using Microsoft Excel, but adding a regression line to represent the linear regression equation based on the relationship between the two variables displayed in your scatter plot. In this video, you're going to be using some data that I've already prepared for you. It's coming from the sample data that has been used throughout the semester in many of these tutorials. But in this video and in this lesson, I went ahead and prepared this data for you. So let me go ahead and discuss what the data is, and then we'll download it and start to work with it to create these scatter plots. So in the correlation tutorial, we found that there was a strong, significant negative correlation between sleep and work hours and sleep and number of children. So in this video, we are going to explore that correlation with regression. And so the data is prepared so that when we do the regression analyses, you're ready to rock right here with this data. But then when you create your scatter plots, you really want to have data where X and Y are just right next to each other. So I went ahead and did that for you here. This is going to be X and this is going to be Y for this analysis, and then this will be X and this will be Y. And in both cases, we're really looking at how much people are sleeping as our dependent variable, and then our quasi-independent variables are our X values, our number of children, and typical weekly work hours. Of course, those are not things we can manipulate, so that's why it's called a quasi-independent variable. And remember, correlation and regression, we treat our quasi-independent variables as X variables, and then our dependent variable, which in this case is sleep, as our Y variable. Also, I cleaned this data to get rid of the only outlier that we have, which is the student who had 10 children. So you will not find them there. In the correlation video, we also got rid of an outlier who had 25 missed classes, but since we aren't looking at number of missed classes in this data, I did not remove that person because they don't have an outlier anymore because I'm not looking at that variable. So just remember, with correlation and regression in Excel, you cannot have any missing data. So if you have to get rid of an outlier, if you're including that person in the including that person with the different variables in the analysis, you just have to get rid of them completely if they have an outlier at all. All right, so let's go ahead and download our data and get started making some scatter plots. So you can just go to File, Download, Microsoft Excel. You're also welcome to just open an Excel workbook on your computer and then copy and paste this data in, and then just double check to make sure that the pasting worked and you didn't get anything funky. All right, so I'm going to enable editing. And again, you can just skip over this sample data tab and go straight to the data that I prepared for you that has the one outlier removed and has all of our variables prepared and ready. All right, I don't like the way these look. Look, these look funky. So let's go ahead and click up here and go to Format under the Home tab and just Auto Fit column width. Okay, and also we're going to click into these and hit Enter. Let's see, so that or double click. There you go. And then scroll down. So when you use spacing to kind of get it to go to another line, sometimes it gets a little wonky when you download it. So you can like stretch this row down and you can just double click in. Now, if you aren't a little bit obsessed with formatting like I am and you want to skip this step and have ugly data, that's on you. You can totally do that. That's fine. Okay, here we go. So the first thing that I want to do is I want to create a scatter plot that displays the relationship between number of children and average hours of nightly sleep. Now, in the previous analysis with correlation, I found that number of children and sleep had a correlation of negative 0.45. And I'm expecting a similar result here just because I only got rid of one outlier instead of two, so it should be pretty similar. Okay, here we go. So let's run that scatter plot. So if it's a negative correlation, I'm expecting my dots to have kind of a downward slope. And since it's relatively strong, I'm expecting my dots to be semi-close to a line, but still spread out because it's not super, super strong. All right, so we're going to go to, actually, we want to highlight our variables here. So you want to highlight your X, number of children, and your Y, sleep. Go up to Insert. Under Charts, go to the Scatter option. And just click that. All right, so we have some formatting to do. We see that kind of downward slope, right? And it's pretty close to a line, so that's a good thing. So we know it's, pretty strong and negative, as we saw in the previous lesson with correlation. And we'll get that correlation coefficient again in the next video. So let's clean this up. let's go ahead and get rid of this title. And actually, let's just go to quick layout and do layout 1 because that gets us where we need to be. So we'll get rid of these, the title and the legend. Let's go ahead and clean up our axes. I always like to have my axis represent the range in my data. If you use Likert scales, like a scale from 1 to 7, then you want to represent that full range. But if you're using ratio data, I will cut it off at the highest value. So in this case, that is a 6. So I'm just going to right click here, make sure that you actually, so click out, see a square around that axis, right? See that little square popped up? I'm going to right click. See, it went away. Stinker. There we go. Format axis. Boom. And we want to cap it off at a 6 and hit enter. Also, we'll see that there's nobody below 4. So let's go ahead. Nobody got less than 4 hours of sleep, thank goodness. So let's go ahead and click on that set of numbers. Hey, it worked that time. Since the axis options were already up, it just brings me up to the axis options for my y-axis. And we'll keep 12 as our maximum because it almost goes up to there. But let's make 4 our minimum. There we go. I also like to make my dots a little bit bigger, so I'm just going to click here on the dots, click on the little paint can. Oh, no, we got to click on the actual dots. There. Then click on the paint can, go to marker, marker options, and here's where you can increase the size of those dots if you like. You can even make them different shapes if you want to have fun with it. Okay, enough about the nitty-gritty stuff. Now let's get into fixing our axis titles and adding our regression line. So here, we're going to type our axis title, which is our x variable, which is number of children. All right, then over here, you can put sleep hours. Okay. I also want to make my font a little bigger, so I'm going to go to the Home tab, make sure this whole thing is selected, and I'm just going to increase my font size here. Okay. Maybe down one more. There we go. Now, the important part, right, to enter our regression line. So you go to Chart Design while the chart is selected, or the scatter plot is selected. Add chart element. Here's where you could have added axis titles manually. But here we're going to go to trend line, linear. I don't love this line, so I'm going to click on it and I can edit it to make it look however I want. And you're welcome to make it look however you want. So you can click black. Let's see, I want to make it just a straight line. I want to make it fatter. Cool. All right. So there's our regression line. And eventually we'll make a regression equation to confirm that. And the way that you confirm that is you take your equation, you plug in a low value of x, like 0, and see what you get. I guarantee you're going to get something around, between 8 and 9, or 8 and 10. Let's make this a little bigger. There, you're going to get something close to 9, right? And then if you use the equation that we'll get in the next video and plug in 6, you're going to get something around a little bit higher than a 5. And that's how you could manually plot that line, right? You get your regression equation, then you plug in a value for x, get the y that would be predicted, plot that. Plug in another value for x, find the y that would be predicted, plot that, and connect the dots. All right, now let's do a quicker tutorial with a little repeat, looking at weekly work hours as our x variable, predicting sleep. So not only does the number of kids predict sleep, but probably the number of work hours as well. So here we go. We're going to highlight our 2 variables. I just kind of drag across the letter above the columns. Go to Insert, Charts. It's scatter time. Here we go. So we're going to clean this up. We're going to make it a layout of format 1. Get rid of the title. You could add a figure label there if you wanted to at the top, but I'm not going to. Let's go ahead and click on our dots. Format plot area. There. If you click a dot, it'll bring up the marker options. And you don't have to do this part if you don't want to. I just like to show you a little extra stuff and show you exactly what I did to get it to look the way I wanted it to look. Oh, I also changed the color on this, by the way, before I forget. So I made mine. I was feeling the blackness this time. Look, it changed my line too, that stinker. But you can leave it blue if you want. It's up to you. All right, so here we go. Now we're going to change our axis to reflect the actual range. So we will only go up to 50 here because nobody worked more than 50 hours. So right click, format this axis, and we want to go up to 50. All right, then our y-axis represents sleep. Again, remember, nobody got less than 4 hours of sleep, so we'll just click here, right click, format that axis, and our minimum is a 4. And hit enter. You see magic happen. All right, now let's go ahead and get out of here. Fix our labels. So now this no longer represents number of children. This is weekly work hours. Okay. And this is still the same y variable. We're still looking at sleep hours. Great. Let's increase our font size. So just go to the Home tab, make sure it's selected. You can increase it from there. I'm also really feeling black right now, so let's make that font black in both of these. And let's make this a little bit bigger. Now we need to add our mighty regression line. So we go up to Chart Design, Add Chart Element, Trend Line, Linear. And I'm going to edit my line again, just because I can't help myself. If I double click it, it brings up my options. That's pretty sweet. Click here, make it black, and bigger. I really like my regression line. I want it to stand out. You'll notice, yet again, our regression line is going downward, right? Because we kind of already knew that we were going to have a negative correlation here. The dots have a spread, but it's clearly a downward direction, so we know it's a moderate to strongish negative correlation. And also notice in both cases that the regression line goes right down the middle of the dots. And that's really the purpose of the regression line, is to give you the least amount of error possible in your predictions based on the relationship that you see in your data. The stronger your correlation, the closer your dots fit a straight line, and the less error you'll have in your predictions because your dots will be closer to your line. The weaker your correlation, the more spread out your dots are in your scatter plot, the more error there's going to be in your predictions, right? The further your dots will be from your regression line. But regardless, having some sort of prediction, even if there's some error involved, is better than just kind of, shooting in the dark and not really knowing what's going on and having no data to back your predictions on. So I hope you enjoyed getting some extra practice with scatter plots and also learning how to tweak the formatting and plot a regression line with one simple click or two in your scatter plot.